Today I want to answer one of the questions I get more than any other question out there, and it's how much money do you need to actually go full-time as a stock market investor, where you don't need any other income sources, you don't need to have a job, you don't need anything, you just focus full-time on investing in the stock market, and that's what you do. Like, how much money do you need to get to that level? I want to share with you guys that amount and kind of like how you should think about it, all right? Which is some people's goal. Some people just want to be a full-time investor, and that's awesome. Also, in the second part of the video, I'm going to share with you my story. So basically, there was a time in my life I wanted to go full-time as an investor, and I went ahead and did that for about a year and a half. I want to share with how that went with you guys, my mentality around that, and I also want to share at the end if there's any plans on me going full-time as an investor again, if I care about that or anything like that, guys. So we'll share all that. Hit a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's video, all right? So if you want to know how much money you need to basically make it as a full-time stock market investor, the first thing you got to think about is you got to think about, well, what's the average return you can get consistently in the stock market, all right? What's your return you can get consistently? And I can tell you, if you just have 1 year or 2 years that are really good, I wouldn't get hyped out on that, okay? You can't, like, if you got, let's say, a 50% return 1 year, great, and that's awesome for you, but the chances you can get a 50% return consistently very, very slim, okay? It's not very realistic out there, but sometimes you can just knock it out of the ballpark. But the question is, what can you do consistently? What is your return on average, okay? What is your return on average per year? That's the big question you got to ask yourself, okay? So here, there are two ways to kind of think about this, all right? And if you want to make it full-time as a stock market investor, let's think about it. The stock market on average goes up around 8% per year, okay? 7-8% per year. So if you're good in the stock market, you're an above average investor, you can probably get on average around a 10% number per year. Now, some years you should outperform that. Maybe you get up to a 20% or maybe even above a 20%, depending on how the market goes. But also some years you'll probably break even. Some years you might even take a loss, okay? So 10%, you're probably doing pretty good, okay? So for our numbers, we're going to break out. We're going to assume 10% for some of them. And then if you're a great investor, like you're going to be like on the Mount Rushmore of investors, okay? If you're a great investor, you can consistently get 20% on average per year, okay? Some years you'll do a little worse than that, but some years you'll get 30, 40, maybe even 50% gains, okay? So we'll kind of break out both these numbers. If you're a good investor, all right, which you're doing better than the market, and if you're a great investor in the stock market and you're basically knocking out of the ballpark. Back in the day, Warren Buffett consistently got about 20% per year. Now Warren Buffett, he really doesn't get 20% per year, but you got to understand it's a different game for Warren Buffett now. He's having to invest tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars whenever he makes an investment. So the amount of companies he has to even pick from is a very, very small amount compared to his earlier days back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when he could basically invest in almost any company out there, all right? But 20% per year consistently, like you are a great investor. You're unbelievable, okay? So let's think about this for a minute. You know, some people think like $100,000 will cut it, okay? Some people think 100,000, like that's enough. You can be good on 100K. And we'll kind of break out these numbers for like United States, but even like thinking about like living expenses in the United States, it can differ a lot. Like out here in Las Vegas, like a home like, my wife and I and the kids live in, like a home like this in Vegas is really cheap compared to like LA. Like LA, this home would probably be $3 million, where out here it's much, much cheaper than that. So even in the United States, the prices for you to live and just live like an average life or normal life or something like that, it's very different, okay? So let's say you get a 10% gain, on average with 100K, you're basically only making about 10K, okay? And even if you're getting, a 20% gain on $100,000, that's only 20K per year, all right? After taxes taken out, then you're down to, somewhere around 8K and somewhere around maybe 16, 17K there, okay? That's not enough to live off of unless you live with your parents or something like that. It's just so unrealistic, okay? Especially in the United States. Maybe there's some parts of the world you could live off $8,000 or $16,000 per year, but United States, like it's just not going to happen, okay? And you'll not be able to do anything with that. So 100K completely out of it. It's so unrealistic. Like don't even try that, okay? Let's bump it up a bit. Let's say maybe about what about $500,000, okay? What about $500,000? Well, $500,000, if you're getting 10% per year, $500,000, then you're making about $50,000 per year, that you can go ahead and have. If you're getting a 20% gain on that, that's $100,000, okay? Now, once again, after taxes, all of a sudden you're looking at, maybe $42K, somewhere around there roughly. And here you're maybe looking at about $85,000, somewhere around there, okay, after taxes, which is not bad. And some people could live off that, okay? Some people could live off, if you don't have a family and you don't live in a very expensive market in the United States, you can live off of $42,000 a year or $85,000 a year, okay? You're certainly not going to be able to live a lavish lifestyle. And the main issue I kind of personally have with this is you're going to have no extra money to go ahead and put back into stocks, okay? So it'd be nice if you can get to a place where you're making enough money where you can live a nice lifestyle and maybe support not only yourself, but a family or something like that, and then have more money to go ahead and deposit in your account so that $500,000 over time becomes $550, and then $600, and then $800, and then $1 million, and so on and so forth. So at a $500,000, still, you're not cutting the mustard, okay? Even with the 10 or 20% gain, in my personal opinion, you can probably support yourself if you're a single person in a cheap market or something like that. That's fine, but you're not really building any extra, which is what you really need to do. Because here's the thing: eventually, you're going to have a bad year where you actually have a negative return, and then you're going to have to sell stocks at bad prices because you need money to live off of or something like that, okay? So $500,000, $500,000, it's still not enough in my personal opinion to cut it, all right? So let's bump this up. Let's say $1 million, all right? Let's say $1 million. And this, in my opinion, is when you start to maybe get realistic. Remember, this is just $1 million invested in the stock market alone, okay? Just the stock market alone. Now, at this point, $1 million, if you're getting a 10% return, now we're talking about you're getting $100,000 in basically proceeds that you can sell off of stocks and make profits or dividends or whatever. So after taxes, that's around $85,000, right? And if we've got $1 million and we're getting a 20% gain, now we're talking about $200K. So, and after taxes, you're probably looking at something around, let's say 170K. So we'll say 165K there. So now you're starting to get to a place where it's starting to make sense. But even still, now I'm not a big fan of this, okay? Generally, you got $1 million just in stocks. So your lifestyle you're going to want to live. You're probably going to want to have a nice car and a nice house and eat nice meals and things like that. So even at this stage, like you're really not going to have any extra money to funnel back in here, because your living expenses are probably just going to be more. That's generally just what happens when all of a sudden you become a millionaire. You're getting up to those type of numbers. You don't want to just live in or at least most people don't just want to live in an average house or drive an average car or something like that. So I would say for the average person, if you are content with driving a 2004 Toyota Camry and living in a very, very average house and those type of things, and that's great. And maybe you can probably make it off of $1 million. But if you have if you want to take up your lifestyle, I'm just telling you, $1 million is not going to cut it. But I would say this is a first number where, if you live really, really cheaply, like this kind of can start making sense, because you can live really cheap and you can maybe funnel some money back into stocks here and there, okay? It just depends on your own situation. The amount of money, in my opinion, what I think is the ultimate, the perfect amount of money to really start to think about this, is I think the perfect amount of money is around $2 million, okay? But here's the catch. You also, in my opinion, should have $500,000 just in a savings account. That is what you live off of for your living expenses, okay? So if you're living a decent lifestyle, you could live off this money and not get any return on investment for, many, many years, and you would be okay, because this is where your living expenses in. So essentially, this means you really have about $2.5 million. $2 million is in the stock market, $500,000 is in a savings account or something like that it covers all your living expenses, so you don't have to ever worry about selling stocks or something like that. And here's how the numbers break down for this. So a 10% gain on this is obviously about $200,000. That's about $165K or so after taxes. If you're getting 20% consistently and you're a great investor, you're making about $400K per year. That's roughly, let's say 325K or somewhere around there after taxes. We're talking about big numbers where one, this money is basically you're able to just funnel this back in so you can build up that account bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden that $2 million can go to $2,165,000 or $2,325,000. And you're not having to count on that because you got this $500,000 that you're able to, support yourself and your family if you have a family and things like that, okay? So in my opinion, $2.5 million is the ultimate number where I feel like in most parts of the world, and you can make an argument that maybe in New York City, if you live there, or Los Angeles, maybe that wouldn't even cut it, okay? But I would say most parts of the United States, most parts of the developed world, if you have $2 million in stocks and you can consistently get 10 to 20% per year and you got $500,000 in the bank, like you're gonna be good, you're gonna cut it, okay? So that's the number I would say. For me personally, I'd probably want to have at least 5 in stocks alone before I would start doing it, because I just tell you our living expenses are quite expensive, even though we live in a cheap part. It's just, having a family and you want to live a nice lifestyle, like it gets pretty expensive, all right? Now, I want to tell you that's the numbers, okay? I'm going to tell you I went full-time as a stock market investor for about a year and a half time. This was after I left QuikTrip when I was 24 years old, somewhere around there. And I wanted to leave it, and what I didn't realize is it wasn't so much I wanted to just focus full-time on stocks. It was also the fact that I think I was so done with QuikTrip, my job I had at that time, and I just wanted to live my own life and make my own moves and do my own decisions, that I think that really forced me into like a mentality of, I want to go full-time so bad, okay? And then I went full-time, and at first it was amazing. Okay, the first few days, the first few weeks of going full-time as a stock market investor were absolutely amazing. It was a great feeling, okay? But it wasn't just so much a great feeling because I was going full-time as a stock market investor. It was mainly a great feeling because I left the workplace I was working at, that I was just kind of done, and I wanted to wake up at whatever time I wanted to wake up on and do those type of things, okay? And so I started out this journey as being a stock market investor full-time, and what I found, first off, I didn't have nearly enough money, okay? I'd gotten consistently 30 to 40% gains per year, okay? So how I was thinking, I had $200,000 in stocks, okay? I had $200,000 in stocks, and our expenses were super cheap back then. I didn't have, when I first left the workplace, I didn't have a kid at that time or anything, and also my wife had an income, so we just lived a very modest lifestyle at that time. We were living in like a 2-bedroom apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, and so we hardly spent any money, and so I thought $200,000, if I can get consistently the gains I got for several years in a row, 30 to 40% gains, then maybe I'm clearing, $60K per year or something like that, maybe $80K per year, which at that time was enough money for me, okay, because once again, our living expenses were super cheap. So I thought, $200K was going to be enough, and it wasn't even nearly enough, because what ended up happening was I got scared that it wasn't enough. I started actually working out the numbers, and I realized I might have messed up here, and then I started margining money out, and then I started trading way more often, not just because of the margin, but because also I had all this free time. Okay, this is something, if you work a normal job, okay, you work a normal job for 40, maybe 40 plus hours a week, your mind is consumed with that job and kind of what you have to do there and whatever you're doing, okay? Or if you have your own business, you're probably working 40 plus hours a week that your mind is consumed. All of a sudden you get all that time back, and all of a sudden you got a lot of free time, and that can be fun, but it can also hurt you, because basically all of a sudden you're starting to think, maybe I should be trading more often, and all of a sudden I'm looking at other stocks more often. I'm like, dang, this stock just went up 10% today. Man, why didn't I buy that stock? And all of a sudden you start thinking, maybe I should start trading more often. Then you're on margin, and it just was not a conducive experience, okay? It was not something that was good in the end for me, although I thought it was going to be good. So I can tell you most people want to go full-time as a stock market investor, mainly because they probably don't like their job in the end, and they don't like what they do, okay? I can tell you nowadays, I love what I do so much that I literally care 0% about going full-time as an investor, okay? If I had $20 million, $50 million, $100 million, I probably still wouldn't care about going full-time as an investor. And the reason being is I love what I do nowadays. I wake up excited every single day to make a YouTube video. I make a YouTube video almost every single day. I love having my private stock market membership group in the Discord and chatting with everybody and teaching people about stock market investing. I love what I do. So nowadays, I don't even care about going full-time. It doesn't matter how much money I had, just because the simple fact that I love what I do so much. And you know, I live life on my own terms. I record this video when I want to record this video. No one's telling me what to do. I do stuff when I want to do it. And that's a beautiful way to live. And I love what I do. So it's a total different experience when I thought, oh man, I can make it on 200K. You know, it was just so unrealistic. And the real reason when you dig down deep is really just because I wanted to be my own boss and do my own things, and I didn't want to listen to anybody anymore. So in my opinion, you might think you want to go full-time as a stock market investor, but a lot of times, guys, it's just because you don't like your job or you don't like what you're doing on the daily basis. And so you just imagine this lifestyle of looking in front of a computer all day and watching stock prices go up and down and reading 10Ks and listening to conference calls and things like that, which is cool, and I love doing it, but it's not something I would mostly suggest for going full-time, even if you're super passionate like I was about stock market investing, just because I think you're going to be a lot more tempted to trade. If you got nothing else going on in your life as far as like hobbies or like other things going on, I think you're just going to be, you know, very tempted to trade more often, which is, if you're a long-term value investor, trading more often, you're generally going to lose more money, okay? That's just the way things work out, trading in and out of positions and whatnot. Generally, as a value investor, you just want to buy and hold for several years out, 3, 5, 7, 10 years out, and do it that way, okay? So that's my opinion on this, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. Do you have plans to go full-time as an investor? Nothing wrong with it. I would love to hear from you guys down there in that comment section as always. Thank you for watching and have a great day.